In the absolute cold, in the silent, unending dark beyond the final whisper of our world, a sentinel keeps its vigil. It is an instrument of pure discovery, a golden honeycomb eye turned not outward to the stars we know, but backward, through the near infinite expanse of time itself. This is the James Webb Space Telescope, humanity's most ambitious emissary to the unknown. For months, it has drifted in the lonely gravitational oasis of the second Lagrange point, a million miles from home, its mirrors chilled to a breath above absolute zero, waiting. It stares into the deepest and darkest chasms of the cosmos, hunting for the faintest, most ancient ghosts of light. And then, it arrives. Not with a flash or a bang, but as a quiet stream of numbers, a cascade of binary code flowing across the void. On a screen in a darkened room on Earth, a tiny patch of sky, a section so small it represents what a grain of sand held at arm's length would obscure, begins to resolve. This is a deep field. A core sample drilled through 13 billion years of cosmic history. Astronomers lean closer, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of nascent creation. They are looking for the first whispers of light, the faint, chaotic smudges of proto-galaxies struggling to coalesce in the primordial soup of the universe, just a few 100 million years after the Big Bang. They expect to find cosmic infants, small, misshapen, and disorganized. But among the faint red dots, one object refuses to conform. It is catalogued with the unpoetic designation AT25P55. It is not a smudge. It is not small or chaotic. The spectrographic data, the encoded information within its ancient light, tells a story that should not be possible. It speaks of immense mass, of a well-ordered structure, of stars that are surprisingly mature. It is a fully formed metropolis in an age when only scattered huts should exist. A deep, unsettling feeling begins to ripple through the astronomical community. This single, defiant point of light, a phantom from the dawn of time, does not just challenge our theories of galaxy formation. It sends a tremor through the very foundations of our understanding of the universe, a foundation meticulously constructed over a century, with one man's mind as its chief architect, Albert Einstein. The ghost in Webb's machine had begun to whisper that the universe might be far stranger, and its rulebook far more complex than even he had ever imagined. To grasp the magnitude of this cosmic disturbance, we must first travel back to a time before we even knew the universe had a beginning. We must return to the early 20th century, to a world of brilliant minds grappling with the fundamental nature of reality. At the centre of this intellectual ferment was a former patent clerk whose thought experiments had already reshaped our conceptions of space and time. Albert Einstein, having unified space and time with his theory of special relativity, now set his sights on the most pervasive and mysterious force in the cosmos: gravity. For 200 years, Isaac Newton's vision had reigned supreme. Gravity was a force, an invisible tether pulling objects toward one another, instantaneous and absolute. But Einstein was troubled by this. He imagined a universe not of invisible forces, but of geometry. He conceived of a radical new idea. Space and time were not a passive stage upon which the drama of the universe unfolded. They were active participants. They were a single, unified entity, space-time, a dynamic, four-dimensional fabric. And gravity, he proposed, was nothing more than the curvature of this fabric caused by the presence of mass and energy. The analogy is a classic, but its profundity is often understated. Imagine a vast, taut rubber sheet. This is the fabric of space-time. Now place a heavy bowling ball in its centre. The sheet warps, it sags, it creates a deep well. This is a massive object, like our sun, bending the geometry of space-time around it. Now roll a small marble, representing a planet like Earth, near the bowling ball. The marble does not fly off in a straight line, nor is it being actively pulled by some mysterious force emanating from the larger mass. Instead, it follows the curve. It travels along the straightest possible path through the now warped geometry of the sheet. It is in orbit. This was the breathtaking elegance of general relativity, published in 1915. It was a complete reframing of the cosmos. The sun doesn't pull the Earth, it tells space-time how to curve, and space-time tells the Earth how to move. This was a theory of sublime power, predicting everything from the slight wobble in the orbit of Mercury to the bending of starlight by the sun's immense gravity, a prediction famously confirmed by Arthur Eddington during a solar eclipse in 1919, making Einstein a global icon overnight. But when Einstein attempted to apply his magnificent equations to the universe as a whole, he encountered a profound problem. His own mathematics told him that the universe must be dynamic. It should either be expanding or contracting. This idea was intellectually abhorrent to the prevailing scientific consensus, and even to Einstein himself. The universe was believed to be eternal, static, and unchanging, a grand clockwork mechanism that had always existed and always would. To force his equations to match this comfortable static reality, he introduced a fudge factor. He called it the cosmological constant, represented by the Greek letter lambda. It was a kind of cosmic anti-gravity, a repulsive energy inherent to the fabric of space itself, perfectly calibrated to counteract the inward pull of gravity, holding the universe in a delicate static balance. It was, as he would later admit, his biggest blunder. Because while Einstein was tailoring his equations to fit his assumptions, an American astronomer named Edwin Hubble was methodically peering into the heavens from his perch atop Mount Wilson in California. Using the colossal 100-inch Hooker telescope, the most powerful on Earth, Hubble was settling a long-standing debate. He proved that the faint, spiral nebulae, like Andromeda, were not gas clouds within our own Milky Way. They were distant colossal islands of stars in their own right, island universes as they were called. But his most revolutionary discovery was yet to come. By analysing the light from these distant galaxies, he noticed a peculiar systematic shift. The light was stretched. Its wavelength shifted towards the red end of the spectrum. This phenomenon, known as redshift, was a cosmic Doppler effect. Just as the pitch of a siren lowers as it moves away from you, the wavelength of light from a galaxy stretches as it recedes. What Hubble found was astonishing. Nearly every galaxy he observed was redshifted, and even more startling, the farther away a galaxy was, the faster it was moving away from us. The conclusion was inescapable, and it shattered the static conception of the cosmos forever. The universe was not static, it was expanding. The very fabric of space-time was stretching, carrying these galaxies along for the ride, like raisins in a rising loaf of bread. When Einstein heard of Hubble's discovery, he realized the universe had been screaming its dynamism at him all along, right from his own original equations. He promptly abandoned his cosmological constant, recognizing that the expanding universe was the natural and far more elegant solution. This revelation gave birth to the modern science of cosmology. If the universe is expanding today, then it must have been smaller, denser, and hotter in the past. Rewinding the cosmic clock leads to an inescapable conclusion, a point of almost infinite density and temperature, a moment of creation. The Big Bang. Over the decades that followed, this theory was refined into what is now known as the lambda cold dark matter model, or lambda CDM. It is the standard model of cosmology, and it is built upon Einstein's foundational architecture. The lambda in its name marks the ironic return of Einstein's biggest blunder. Observations of distant supernovae in the late 1990s revealed that the expansion of the universe isn't just happening, it's accelerating. Something is pushing space-time apart ever faster, and the best explanation we have is a form of repulsive energy suffusing the vacuum of space, precisely what Einstein's cosmological constant described. This mysterious force is now called dark energy. The other pillar of the model is cold dark matter. This is an invisible, non-interactive form of matter that, we believe, makes up about 27% of the universe. We can't see it, but we can detect its gravitational influence. It is the hidden scaffolding upon which all visible structure is built. According to the lambda CDM model, the universe began with the Big Bang, underwent a brief hyperfast period of expansion called inflation, and then cooled. Tiny quantum fluctuations during inflation were magnified into slight density variations in the early cosmos. These denser regions, rich with cold, dark matter, acted as gravitational seeds. Over hundreds of millions of years, they slowly attracted more dark matter and ordinary gas, growing into larger and larger halos. This is a bottom-up model of formation. Small things form first, and then, through a slow, hierarchical process of mergers and acquisitions over cosmic eons, they build the colossal galaxies we see today. The lambda CDM model is a monumental intellectual achievement. It accurately predicts the cosmic microwave background radiation, the afterglow of the Big Bang, the large-scale structure of the universe, and the abundance of light elements. It has been the unchallenged guidebook to our cosmos for decades, a beautiful, comprehensive and predictive story of our cosmic origins, a story that, until now, seemed all but complete. But to read the very first chapter of that story, to witness the events the lambda CDM model describes, we needed a new kind of eye. We needed a time machine. Building it would become one of the greatest technological undertakings in human history. The dream began decades ago, a successor to the legendary Hubble Space Telescope. But this new observatory couldn't just be a better Hubble. It needed to see the universe in a fundamentally different way. It needed to capture a kind of light that is invisible to the human eye, and to Hubble itself, infrared light. The reasoning is as elegant as it is profound. Because the universe is expanding, the light from the very first stars and galaxies, which may have started as brilliant blue or white light, has been travelling towards us for over 13 billion years. Throughout its journey, the very fabric of space it was travelling through was stretching. This stretching of space also stretched the wavelength of the light itself, shifting it down the electromagnetic spectrum all the way into the infrared. To see the cosmic dawn, you must have infrared vision, but there is a monumental challenge. Infrared light is essentially heat radiation. Any warm object, including a telescope's own mirrors, emits infrared light. Trying to detect faint, ancient infrared signals with a warm telescope is like trying to spot a lit match in the middle of a blazing forest fire. The instrument's own heat would blind it. The new telescope, therefore, had to be unimaginably cold. To achieve this, it had to be sent far from the warmth of the Earth to a gravitationally stable point 1,000,000 miles away, and it would need a colossal sunshield, a technological marvel the size of a tennis court, made of 5 layers of a gossamer-thin material called Captain, each layer thinner than a human hair, to block the light and heat from the sun, earth and moon. The mirror, the very heart of the telescope, also had to be extraordinary. To collect enough of this faint ancient light, it needed to be enormous, over 6 times the area of Hubble's. But a single mirror that large would be too heavy to launch into space. The solution was a segmented, foldable mirror, a honeycomb of 18 hexagonal segments made of beryllium, a metal both incredibly strong and lightweight. Each segment was then coated with an exquisitely thin layer of pure gold, not for decoration, but because gold is exceptionally reflective of infrared light. This golden eye would be folded up like origami to fit inside a rocket, travel for a month to its lonely outpost, and then painstakingly unfold and align itself in the cryogenic void, a process of unprecedented complexity with hundreds of potential points of failure. This was the James Webb Space Telescope, a testament to human ingenuity and our unyielding desire to know our origins. When it finally opened its golden eye in 2022, a breathless global community of scientists held its collective breath. They were about to gaze upon the first pages of the cosmic story, pages they were confident they knew how to read, thanks to the robust map provided by Einstein and the lambda CDM model. The first images were breathtaking, exceeding all expectations. They revealed stellar nurseries hidden behind clouds of dust, the atmospheric composition of distant exoplanets, and galactic collisions with astonishing clarity. Webb was a triumph. Emboldened, astronomers initiated their most ambitious programs, the deep fields. The strategy is simple but profound. Point the telescope at a tiny, seemingly empty patch of sky, a celestial blank slate, and just stare. For hundreds of hours, Webb gathered every single photon trickling in from this minuscule window into the past. As the data accumulated, light that had been travelling since the universe was a mere toddler finally resolved on Webb's detectors. This was the search for the first galaxies, the pioneers of the cosmos. And in one such deep field, astronomers found T25P55. The initial signal was just one among many faint red objects. The team of researchers, led by a group of the world's leading cosmologists, began their standard analysis. They measured its redshift, which confirmed its staggering distance and age. Its light had been travelling for over 13.5 billion years. We were seeing it as it was when the universe was only about 300 million years old, a mere 2% of its current age. At this epoch, according to the standard lambda CDM model, galaxies should be in their absolute infancy. They should be small, clumpy, chaotic collections of gas and the first generation of stars containing maybe 1 million solar masses at most. They would be the building blocks, the cosmic Lego bricks, that would later assemble into larger structures like our Milky Way. But the data from AT25P55 told a different heretical story. As they analysed the spectrum and brightness, a collective sense of disbelief spread through the team. The calculations suggested this galaxy contained not 1 million, but perhaps 100 billion solar masses. It was a behemoth, a fully fledged galactic citizen in an era of cosmic villages. It was as massive as our own Milky Way is today, but seen at a time when such a colossal structure should have been physically impossible to assemble. The meticulous, bottom-up process of slow, steady mergers simply hadn't had enough time to work. The universe was too young. To find as T25P55 in the early cosmos is akin to an archaeologist excavating a prehistoric cave, expecting to find primitive stone tools and charcoal from a simple campfire, and instead unearthing a fully assembled, perfectly functional internal combustion engine. The discovery is nonsensical. An engine requires an entire history of technological evolution that hasn't happened yet. It needs the discovery of metals, the invention of forging, the understanding of thermodynamics, the development of precision machining, and the refining of fossil fuels. Each step is a prerequisite for the next, and this process takes millennia. To find the end product without the history is to break the timeline, to violate the known laws of development. So too with AT25P55. It displays features of maturity. Its light suggests the presence of older, redder stars, implying that it had already undergone significant bursts of star formation. It appears to have a developed structure, possibly even a disk. It is an object that seems to have skipped its entire childhood and adolescence. The existence of this engine in the cave forces the archaeologists to question everything they thought they knew. Was their understanding of the timeline of human development completely wrong? Were they misinterpreting the evidence? Or was there an entirely unknown and radically different pathway to technological advancement they had never even considered? This was the crisis facing the astronomers. The scientific method demands rigorous skepticism. The first assumption was error. The team tore their own work apart, searching for a flaw. Could the redshift measurement be wrong? Was it actually a much closer, less remarkable galaxy masquerading as an ancient giant? They reanalyzed the spectra. The evidence held firm. Could there be a gravitational lens, a massive object in the foreground whose gravity was bending and magnifying the light from a much smaller, more distant galaxy, making it appear deceptively large and bright? They scoured the field for any such lensing object. None was found. The data was cross-checked by independent teams. Instruments were recalibrated. Every possible mundane explanation was explored and one by one eliminated. The uncomfortable conclusion began to set in. The object was real. The measurements were correct. A T25P55 and other similarly oversized galaxies that Webb is now beginning to uncover are a genuine feature of our universe's past. The engine in the cave is real, and so the foundations of cosmology, the elegant structure built upon Einstein's framework, began to show cracks. The discovery of impossibly massive early galaxies like AT25P55 presents a direct and profound challenge to the standard model of cosmology. It does not necessarily invalidate the entirety of general relativity or the Big Bang, but it strikes at the heart of our understanding of how structure emerged from the primordial universe. The carefully constructed step-by-step narrative of galaxy formation, a central chapter in the Lambda CDM storybook, appears to be fundamentally incomplete, or perhaps, in parts, simply wrong. The standard bottom-up scenario where tiny halos of dark matter slowly coalesce and gravitationally shepherd gas into the first small galaxies is a process governed by time. It is gradual. It is hierarchical. It cannot, under its current parameters, produce a galaxy as developed as AT25P55 in just 300 million years. There simply wasn't enough time since the Big Bang for the required number of mergers to have occurred. This forces cosmologists into a daunting but exciting new territory, re-examining the fundamental assumptions of their model. One of the first suspects is the nature of dark matter itself. The C in lambda CDM stands for cold, meaning the hypothetical dark matter particles were moving slowly in the early universe. This slowness is crucial for the gradual bottom-up formation of structure. But what if dark matter isn't so cold? What if there are warm or hot dark matter particles that move faster? This would fundamentally change how matter clumps together, possibly allowing for different formation pathways. However, these models have their own problems, often failing to reproduce the large-scale structure of the cosmic web we observe today. Another possibility is that the initial seeds of structure, planted during the inflationary period fractions of a second after the Big Bang, were different from what we've assumed. Perhaps the primordial density fluctuations were not perfectly random and uniform. Maybe there were rare, much larger fluctuations that could have served as the gravitational cradles for supergalaxies, allowing them to grow far more rapidly than their peers. This would be like finding that the dough for our cosmic bread was not smooth, but contained massive, dense lumps of raisins from the very beginning destined to become enormous structures. This line of inquiry pushes our physics to the absolute edge, into an energy regime we cannot replicate on Earth, a time when the fundamental forces of nature may have operated differently. Even more radical ideas are now being discussed with newfound urgency. Could it be that the first generation of stars, the so-called population 3 stars, were far more massive and efficient at producing heavy elements and black holes than our models predict? Perhaps these first supernovae were so powerful they hyper-accelerated the process of gas collapse in their vicinity. Or maybe, as some theories suggest, primordial black holes, formed directly from the collapse of dense regions in the infant universe, acted as the gravitational anchors around which these monster galaxies could rapidly assemble, skipping the slow dark matter halo merger process entirely. They wouldn't need to build a gravitational well. They would be born with one. And what of the universe itself? The discovery calls into question the very timeline we take for granted. Is it possible that the universe is older than we think? This is a highly controversial idea, as it would require us to fundamentally reassess our measurements of the Hubble constant, the rate of cosmic expansion, which is one of the most well-measured quantities in cosmology. Yet, some physicists are exploring so-called tired light models or other alternatives that could stretch the cosmic age, providing more time for these structures to form. The presence of T25P55 forces us to open every drawer, to look under every rug of cosmological theory. It suggests that the formation of galaxies might not be a single uniform process. Perhaps there are multiple pathways. The slow, bottom-up method described by Lambda CDM may be responsible for the majority of galaxies, like our own Milky Way. But there may also be a fast lane, a completely different mechanism that builds galactic titans in the blink of a cosmic eye. This is not the death of Einstein's legacy. General relativity itself remains as solid as ever. The curvature of space-time is not in doubt. But the cosmological model built upon it is proving to be a first draft, not a final manuscript. Science does not progress by finding evidence that confirms what it already knows. It makes its greatest leaps forward when it is confronted with an anomaly, a piece of data that stubbornly refuses to fit, a discovery that shakes up the established order. A T25P55 is one such discovery. It is a messenger from a bygone era, carrying a note that reads, "You're missing a crucial piece of the puzzle. It is a beautiful crisis. The James Webb Space Telescope has not given us the answers we expected. Instead, it has given us more profound, more complex questions. It has pulled back a curtain we did not even know was there, revealing a cosmic stage in the earliest act of its play that is far more dramatic and precocious than the script had led us to believe. We are like cartographers who, believing they had mapped the entire coastline of a continent, suddenly see the fog lift to reveal another vaster continent beyond the horizon. The existence of AT25 P55 does not make our old map useless, but it shows us in no uncertain terms that our world, our universe, is immeasurably larger and more complex than we had conceived. The quest to understand this impossible galaxy has only just begun. Future observations with Webb and other instruments will hunt for more of these cosmic anomalies, determining if AT25 P55 is a rare exception or a member of a whole new class of celestial objects. Theorists will return to their blackboards, running new simulations, testing new ideas about dark matter, inflation, and the very dawn of time. A new chapter in our cosmic story is being written, not with ink, but with the faint ancient light of impossible worlds. We are a fleeting, curious species on a small blue planet, yet we have built a golden eye capable of looking back to our own cosmic genesis, and the universe, in its infinite majesty, has rewarded our gaze with a new, deeper mystery. The map is being redrawn, the story is being revised, and we, a species born of stardust, are privileged enough to be here, right now, to witness it. The ink is not pigment, but the very marrow of a failing sun. It is written in the language of burning hydrogen and the terminal, desperate fusion of heavier elements. Deep within the crushing pressure of a primordial furnace, 15 million years before the first ancestor of man dared to look upward, a message was composed. This was not a letter of intent or a chronicle of kings, but a final, radiant testament from a sentinel of the deep void. As the star surrendered to the inexorable weight of its own existence, it cast its last will and testament into the abyss. It was an ejection of light, a scream of photons launched across the silent tapestry of the cosmos, destined to traverse a distance so vast it defies the fragile architecture of the human mind. For 15 million years this signal crossed the great oblivion, a lonely traveller through the freezing dark, carrying the memory of a catastrophe that occurred before the mountains of the earth had even finished their slow tectonic ascent. Now, in the late autumn of 2024, the journey reaches its destination. On a jagged mountain peak, far removed from the neon pulse of civilization, a cold wind whispers through the skeletons of stunted trees. Here stands a machine, a hollow eye of glass and silicon turned toward the heavens. It is known as Atlas, a name borrowed from a titan who once carried the weight of the sky, now repurposed to catch the whispers of the dead. Inside the observatory, there is no warmth, only the hum of cooling fans and the rhythmic ticking of machinery that feels small and fragile against the backdrop of the infinite. A single screen flickers in the gloom, casting a pale, ghostly light upon the face of a witness. This observer is a mere flicker in time, a biological accident of carbon and water, yet they are the intended recipient of a letter written 15 million years ago. The contrast is a staggering paradox of scale. Outside the dome, the distance of 30 million kilometers stretches into a void so profound that the human spirit recoils from its emptiness. It is a distance that light itself, the fastest messenger in the universe, has taken an epoch to bridge. And yet this immense journey terminates on a sensor the size of a thumbnail. The colossal energy of a dying star, once capable of incinerating entire planetary systems, is now reduced to a few dozen pixels of agitated light on a monitor. The observer watches as a faint smudge of white appears on the display. It is a ghost, a remnant of a star that no longer exists in any physical sense. To look at this screen is to look through a door into a past so distant that the word yesterday becomes meaningless. The signal from Pegasus arrived tonight, piercing through the atmosphere of Earth. passing through clouds and city lights to find its way into the heart of the Atlas array. It is a midnight signal, a quiet intrusion into the mundane world of 2024. While the world sleeps, while wars are fought and empires crumble in the slow decay of human history, this light completes its ancient errand. The witness feels the weight of this meeting. There is a profound melancholy in the realization that the star which sent this message is already gone, its matter scattered into the interstellar medium to become the dust of future worlds. We are watching the light of a corpse, a funeral pyre that has been burning across the vacuum for 15 million years. This is the Komi Tan Nahan, the ruthless machine of the cosmos. Entropy is the only law that holds absolute power, ensuring that every ignite is followed by an unravelling, every sun followed by a void. The universe does not care for the observer. It does not know that Atlas is watching. The signal was not sent to us, we simply happen to be in the way. We are the accidental sentinels of the abyss, standing on a spinning rock, catching the echoes of celestial tragedies. And yet there is a certain majesty in this insignificance. The fact that a creature composed of the same atoms forged in those ancient furnaces can build a machine to decode the light of its ancestors is a triumph of consciousness. We are the way the universe looks back at itself, the eyes of the cosmos contemplating its own violent birth and inevitable decay. The observer leans closer to the screen. The pixels dance and shift, a chaotic symphony of data that represents the death throes of a giant. The scale paradox is everywhere. The vastness of the 30 million kilometers is mirrored in the complexity of the human brain, where billions of neurons fire in a microscale imitation of the stars. Between the two lies a terrifying gulf. The star was immense, hot and ancient. The human is small, cold and fleeting. Yet, in this moment of detection, they are linked. The light that began its flight when the Earth was a different world entirely has finally found a home in the consciousness of a being who can give it meaning. The void is not just a distance in space, it is a distance in time. To see the signal from Pegasus is to realize that our present moment is a thin, fragile layer of ice over a deep ocean of history. The year 2024 feels solid and certain to us, with its digital networks and its political upheavals, but to the cosmos, it is a subatomic flicker. We are living in the afterglow of a primordial explosion, surrounded by the remnants of events that dwarf our entire existence. The Atlas telescope is more than a tool of science, it is a bridge into the oblivion. It allows us to reach out and touch the hem of the infinite, to acknowledge the sentinel stars that stood guard long before we were a dream in the mind of evolution. As the night deepens, the screen continues to glow. The message from the star is being transcribed into data, recorded for a civilization that might not last another 1,000 years, let alone another 15 million. There is a silent dignity in the star's end, an inexorable march toward the dark that we all must follow. The light of Pegasus is a reminder that we are part of a much larger tapestry, one woven with threads of fire and shadow. The catastrophe that birthed this light was a moment of supreme violence, a cataclysm that shook the very foundations of its local space. But here, 30 million kilometers away, it is a beautiful silent spark. The distance has smoothed the jagged edges of the tragedy, turning a cosmic disaster into a point of contemplation. This is the nature of the universe we inhabit. It is a place of immense beauty and terrifying indifference. The signal does not ask for help. It does not cry out for justice. It simply is. It is the evidence of a process that has been repeating since the first epochs of the cosmos, a cycle of birth, ignition, and decay that will continue long after the last human eye has closed. The observer in the cold observatory feels a sense of melancholic optimism. We are small, yes. We are temporary, certainly. But for one brief moment in the late 2024, we were there to receive the letter. We were the ones who saw the light. The flickering screen remains the only source of light in the room, a digital flame in the dark. Outside, the stars of the modern sky look down with a cold, unblinking gaze. They are the next writers of the next letters, their light already beginning journeys that will end in eyes not yet evolved, on worlds not yet formed. The cycle is eternal, a symphony of light played out across a stage of infinite darkness, and as the Atlas system completes its sweep of the Pegasus sector, the signal begins to fade into the background noise of the universe. The letter has been read, the witness has seen. The vast, silent void remains, waiting for the next spark to ignite the dark, for the next sentinel to send a message into the abyss, and for the next flicker of consciousness to reach out and catch it. We are the inhabitants of a moment, living between two eternities, grateful for the light that tells us we're not entirely alone in the deep, primordial night. The silence of the observatory is not an absence of sound, but a presence of weight. It is the heavy, suffocating pressure of the vacuum translated into the hum of cooling fans and the rhythmic ticking of a clock that measures human time against the backdrop of eternity. As the data from the Pegasus sector settles into the archives, a new perturbation emerges on the periphery of our digital vision. It is a ghost in the machinery, a flicker of light that does not belong to the predictable clockwork of our local neighbourhood. We are now entering the second phase of our journey into the dark, a chapter defined by the geometry of the interloper. To understand the nature of this visitor, one must first understand the leash. For 4,500,000,000 years, the solar system has been a closed court, a private ballroom where every dancer is tethered to the centre. The planets, the moons, and the millions of rocky fragments in the asteroid belt all follow a circular or elliptical path. They are bound by the gravity of the Sun, held in place by an invisible cord that ensures they return, time and again, to the same relative positions. Their eccentricity, the measure of how much their path deviates from a perfect circle, is less than 1.0. They are domestic creatures, following the well-worn grooves of an ancient mechanism. But now, the Atlas system has detected something that defies the domesticity of our Sun. Moving through the inner solar system is an object that carries no such tether. Its eccentricity is greater than 1.0. In the cold, precise language of orbital mechanics, this means its path is not an ellipse, but a hyperbola. It is a curve that never closes. It is a shape that begins in the infinite past of the deep void and will end in the infinite future of the abyss. This is the geometry of the interloper, a mathematical proof of a wanderer that owes no allegiance to our star. This is the third letter we have intercepted from the deep. The first two were whispers that caught us off guard, but this third missive is a clear, undeniable shout from the dark. We call it an interloper because it does not fit the scale of our local reality. Here, the scale paradox becomes a terrifying tool of perspective. Consider a local asteroid, a simple rock like Bennu or Ryugu. It is like a dog on a leash, circling a stake in the ground. It may pull at the cord, its path may be elongated, but it is fundamentally trapped. It belongs to us. The interloper is something entirely different. It is a wild predator cutting through the solar system at 60 kilometers per second. At such speeds, the gravity of the Sun is not a leash, but a minor inconvenience. The Sun tries to pull it in to bend its will, but the interloper has too much momentum, too much history from the interstellar void. It grazes the Sun, its path warping slightly under the immense gravitational pressure, and then it is gone. It does not slow down. It does not look back. It is a kinetic bullet fired from a gun in another galaxy, passing through our living room without breaking its stride. The mechanics of its path are inexorable. There is no force in our solar system capable of stopping it, no influence that can persuade it to stay. It moves with a cold, mechanical certainty that is both beautiful and horrifying. The word inexorable describes the very nature of its trajectory. It is the physical manifestation of an inevitable truth, that the universe is vast, and we are merely a waypoint on a journey we cannot comprehend. The interloper is a remnant of a catastrophe in a distant star system, perhaps ejected during the violent birth of a giant planet or the death throes of a sun much larger than our own. It has travelled through the silence of the interstellar void for eons, a sentinel of a world that may no longer exist. As we track its movement, the scale of our own existence begins to unravel. We realise that our solar system is not a fortress, but a clearing in a dark forest. We have spent centuries cataloguing the trees within the clearing, believing we understood the boundaries of our world. But the interloper reminds us that the forest is infinite and that things move through the shadows between the trees at speeds that dwarf our fastest machines. At 60 kilometers per second, the interloper crosses the distance between the Earth and the Moon in less than 2 hours. It represents a level of energy that is primordial, a legacy of the high-energy environments of the early cosmos. The witness, watching from the cold observatory in 2024, feels the weight of this revelation. The data on the screen is a series of coordinates and vectors, but the reality is a silent dark stone, perhaps shaped like a shard of glass or a jagged tooth, tumbling through the void. It does not emit light. It only reflects the sun's radiance for a brief fleeting moment before it retreats back into the darkness. It is a messenger that carries no message other than the fact of its own existence. It is the third letter, and it tells us that the void is not empty. It is populated by the debris of 1 billion failed systems and the shrapnel of 1 trillion cosmic collisions. There is a profound melancholy in the geometry of the hyperbola. An ellipse is a promise of return, a cycle of rebirth and repetition. But a hyperbola is a final goodbye. Once the interloper passes the point of its closest approach to the Sun, it will never be seen again. Not by human eyes, not by the eyes of whatever species might follow us, and not by the Sun itself. It will carry the warmth of our star on its surface for a few thousand years, a fading memory of a brief encounter before it returns to the absolute zero of the interstellar abyss. It will continue its journey toward the constellations of the far future, perhaps passing through another solar system in another million years, or perhaps drifting in the oblivion between galaxies until the very atoms of its structure begin to decay. The mechanism of the universe is indifferent to our awe. It does not care that we have labelled this object or that we have calculated its speed to be 60 kilometers per second. The math is not for the universe. The math is for us, a way to whistle in the dark, a way to feel as though we have some measure of control over the vastness that surrounds us. But the geometry of the interloper is a reminder that our control is an illusion. We are observers of an inexorable symphony, a tapestry of motion and gravity that was woven long before we arrived and will continue to unravel long after we're gone. As the sun begins to rise over the observatory, the signal from the interloper grows fainter. It is already heading toward the outer reaches of the system, crossing the orbits of Mars and Jupiter with the same effortless speed. The third letter has been read, and its contents are clear. We are part of a larger, wilder cosmos than our ancestors ever dared to imagine. We live in a neighbourhood where predators occasionally cut through the yard, where the rules of the leash do not apply to everyone, and where the silence of the void is occasionally broken by the passage of a lonely, fast and indifferent traveller. We are the witnesses to this fleeting moment of contact, standing on a fragile world, watching a ghost disappear into the eternal night. The transition from the cold, clinical observations of the outer solar system to the intimate proximity of the inner sanctum is a shift from the theoretical to the visceral. We are no longer discussing a distant point of light or a mathematical probability. We are discussing an encounter. As this visitor, the entity we have named 3i Atlas, pierces the invisible boundaries of our local space, it does something that its predecessors avoided. It enters the deep, private quarters of the terrestrial planets. It approaches the hearth of our star, and in doing so, it brushes against the very fabric of our existence. The geometry of this encounter is chilling. At its moment of closest approach, 3i Atlas passes within 2.5 million kilometers of our world. To the human mind, conditioned by the short distances of terrestrial life, 2.5 million kilometers sounds like an unbridgeable chasm. It is roughly 6 times the distance to the Moon, a span of vacuum that would take the fastest of our chemical rockets days to traverse. But on the scale of the cosmos, this distance is effectively zero. In the grand, sweeping architecture of the solar system, which spans billions of kilometers, 2.5 million kilometres is a mere tremor. It is the thickness of a hair. It is a bullet grazing a cheek. Imagine the sensation of a projectile moving at speeds that defy comprehension, passing so close that the wind of its passage seems to chill the skin, though the vacuum carries no sound and no breeze. To be grazed by such a thing is to be reminded of the fragility of the vessel we inhabit. The bullet does not strike, the catastrophe is averted, but the heat of the passing lead, the sheer kinetic potential that was never realised, leaves a mark on the psyche. We are left standing in the wake of a near miss, staring into the dark, realising that the boundary between our continued survival and total oblivion is a matter of a few degrees of trajectory, a slight variation in the gravitational tug of a distant giant planet. This intimacy stands in stark contrast to the first messenger we truly recognised, the One-Eye Oumuamua. When that silent, elongated sentinel entered our consciousness in 2017, it remained at a respectful, if haunting, distance. It never ventured closer than 24 million kilometres to our world. It was a voyeur, a ghost that watched us from the hallway but never entered the room. Its passage was a mystery observed from afar, a cosmic riddle that left us wondering about its origins and its nature, but we never felt its breath upon us. 24 million kilometres is a buffer, a distance that allows for a certain level of intellectual detachment. We could study it as an anomaly, a strange occurrence in the dark. But 3i Atlas offers no such comfort. By coming 10 times closer than its predecessor, it shatters the illusion of our isolation. It forces us to confront the scale paradox that defines our place in the universe. Here is an object that, by all accounts, is physically insignificant. It is perhaps the size of a large skyscraper, a jagged monolith of frozen gases and primordial dust, no more than a few hundred meters across. If it were placed in the center of a modern city, it would be an impressive landmark, but it would be dwarfed by the mountains that surround it. Yet, this tiny shard of matter is visible against the backdrop of the entire galaxy. This is the paradox of the observer. We are looking at a speck of dust through a microscope, only to realize that the speck is moving through a cathedral. The galaxy is a vast, swirling tapestry of 200 billion stars, a disk of light that spans 100,000 light years. It is a structure so immense that light itself takes eons to cross it. And yet, our attention is fixated on this single, tiny, dark rock. We watch it with the intensity of a predator watching a rival, or a child watching a spark in the dark. The skyscraper-sized visitor becomes the most important thing in the cosmos because of its proximity, because its path intersects with the tiny, fragile sphere of our history. The mechanism of the universe is a ruthless machine of gravity and motion, and in this moment, we see its gears turning with terrifying precision. The sun, a massive engine of nuclear fusion, pulls at the visitor, dragging it into the searing heat of the inner sanctum. The visitor responds, its icy surface beginning to sublime, venting gas and dust in a desperate silent scream as it is tortured by the radiance of the star. It develops a shroud, a coma of glowing matter that makes it appear far larger and more menacing than it truly is. It transforms from a dark stone into a celestial apparition, a ghost that haunts the orbits of the inner planets. We are the witnesses to this transformation. We stand on the surface of Earth, a planet that has enjoyed a period of relative stability for millions of years, and we watch the Sentinel pass. We see the contrast between the eternal and the fleeting. The stars in the background have been there for billions of years and will remain for billions more. Their positions seemingly fixed in a silent cosmic choreography. But the visitor is a transient. It is here for a heartbeat of geologic time, a few weeks of visibility before it is flung back into the abyss by the very gravity that summoned it. There is a deep, melancholic beauty in this encounter. It is a reminder that we live in a universe that is both crowded and empty. It is crowded with the debris of the past, the remnants of solar systems that never formed and planets that were torn asunder. but it is empty in the sense that these objects are separated by distances that the human heart cannot truly fathom. The fact that two such objects, the Earth and 3i Atlas, should find themselves within 2.5 million kilometers of each other is a miracle of timing, a coincidence of celestial mechanics that highlights our vulnerability. As we look up, we are reminded that our world is not a fortress. It is a sanctuary, yes, but its walls are thin. We are protected by nothing more than the laws of physics and the vastness of the void. The passage of the ghost in the inner sanctum is a message written in the language of motion. It tells us that the abyss is active, that the void is not a graveyard but a highway. It tells us that we are part of a larger, more dangerous symphony than we often care to admit. We are the inhabitants of a small blue island in a dark ocean, and occasionally the waves of that ocean bring a piece of driftwood close enough for us to touch, a reminder of the vast, cold and indifferent world that lies beyond our shores. The 3i Atlas will eventually depart, its trajectory a hyperbola that leads toward the infinite. It will carry with it the scars of its passage, the dust it shed in the heat of the sun, and the memory of its brief proximity to a world teeming with life and awareness. It will return to the oblivion from which it came, a lonely traveller in the long dark night between the stars, and we will be left here, standing on our world, looking at the empty space where it once was, feeling the faint, lingering chill of the bullet that grazed our cheek, and realising, perhaps for the first time, how precious and how precarious our moment in the sun truly is. To understand the true nature of this celestial choreography, we must follow the visitor's gaze toward the interior of the system, toward the region where the light of the star is no longer a distant twinkle, but a roaring, inexorable furnace. As we cross the threshold into the inner sanctum, we encounter a boundary of profound significance, a line of demarcation that dictates the very architecture of reality. This is the soot line, a frontier where the gentle chemistry of the outer void meets the violent physics of its maturing sun. In this region, the temperature climbs until the very building blocks of life are unmade. The complex organic molecules, the ices that cling to the skeletons of newborn worlds, and the delicate carbon chains that might one day weave the tapestry of biology are all systematically dismantled. They are vaporized, reduced to their simplest forms, and swept away by the solar wind like ash from a hearth. What remains in this scorched domain are the remnants of a more brutal alchemy. We find ourselves looking upon a dead world, a sphere of iron and silicate that has been stripped of its dignity and its potential for vibrancy. This is the composition of a world that has failed the test of the volatile. It is a baked husk, a planetary carcass that has spent eons in the proximity of a star that acts not as a nurturer, but as a flayer of surfaces. The radiation here is a silent, invisible tide that erodes the possibility of an atmosphere. It strikes the ground with a ferocity that shatters the bonds of water and methane, driving them into the abyss of interstellar space. What is left is the dry, rocky surface of an object that has been refined by fire until only the most stubborn materials remain. It is a monument to the endurance of stone. When we look at the surface of such a world, we are looking at a message etched in stone. Every crater, every tectonic rift, and every field of jagged basalt is a record of a catastrophe that spanned hundreds of millions of years. This is a landscape that knows nothing of the softness of clouds or the rhythmic pulse of oceans. It is a realm of absolute stillness, where the only movement is the agonizingly slow expansion and contraction of rock as it passes from the searing white heat of the day into the absolute zero of the nocturnal shadow. There is no wind to soften the edges of the mountains, no rain to wash away the dust of ancient impacts. The world is a frozen moment of geologic violence, a remnant of the primordial chaos that birthed the planets, now locked in a state of eternal decay. The soot line is the kiln of the cosmos. Inside this radius, the universe creates the skeletons of worlds, but denies them the flesh of an atmosphere. We see this process as a ruthless machine, an indifferent mechanism that sorts the heavy from the light, the permanent from the fleeting. The heavier elements, The iron and the nickel sink toward the centre in a gravitational embrace, forming cores of dense, unyielding metal. The lighter elements, the ones that grant a world the chance to breathe and to harbour the complexity of consciousness, are exiled to the outer dark. This is the paradox of the inner system. The closer a world is to the source of energy, the more it is deprived of the ingredients for life. It is a scorched wasteland, a testament to the fact that power, when concentrated too fiercely, serves only to sterilize. We must contemplate the silence of this place. It is the silence of the void made manifest on a planetary scale. If we were to stand on the surface of this parched world, we would see a sky that is eternally black, even when the sun is at its zenith. Without an atmosphere to scatter the light, the star appears as a terrifying, brilliant eye, hanging in a sky filled with the cold, unblinking stares of 1 trillion distant sisters. There is no blue horizon to comfort the eye, no twilight to ease the transition between light and dark. There is only the sharp, jagged transition between brilliance and oblivion. The landscape itself is a monochrome desert of grey and umber, a tapestry of pulverized rock known as regolith, which has been churned by billions of years of micrometeorite bombardment until it is as fine as flour and as abrasive as diamond. This is the fate of many who wander too close to the fire. They become a witness to their own unravelling. The visitor we watched earlier, the icy traveller from the deep, would eventually find its fate here if its orbit were to decay. Its magnificent shroud of gas would be stripped away, its core of ancient ice would sublime into nothingness, and it would be reduced to a tiny scorched pebble, an insignificant remnant of what was once a majestic celestial apparition. The universe does not mourn this loss. The laws of physics are indifferent to the beauty of a comet or the desolation of a dead world. They simply continue their inexorable work, grinding the mountains into dust and turning the dust into the seeds of future stars. In this phase of our journey, we are forced to confront the scale paradox. We see how the microscopic interactions of photons and atoms result in the macroscopic transformation of an entire world. The stripping of a single molecule of water might seem a trivial event, a microscopic tragedy occurring in the span of a nanosecond. But when multiplied by the vastness of geologic time and the intensity of a star's output, it becomes a planetary catastrophe. It is the process that turns a potential sanctuary into a barren sentinel. We look at these dead worlds, and we see a reflection of our own fragility. We realise that the conditions that allow us to exist are a delicate equilibrium, a narrow window of temperature and pressure that exists only because we are positioned at a precise distance from our own sun, just outside the reach of the most savage fires. The composition of this dead world is a symphony of iron and silence. It is a reminder that the cosmos is a graveyard as much as it is a nursery. For every world that flourishes with the green fire of life, there are 10,000 that have been baked into husks, their stories written in the language of basalt and shadows. These are the forgotten pioneers of the solar system, the ones that formed too close to the light and paid the price in the form of their own souls. They hang in the darkness, circling their masters in a silent, eternal orbit, their surfaces scarred by the memory of a time when the universe was young and full of fire. As we move deeper into the mysteries of the cosmos, we carry the image of this scorched world with us. It serves as a sentinel, a warning that the void is not merely empty space, but a dynamic and often hostile environment. The decay of a world is not a quick process. It is a slow, methodical stripping of everything that makes a place a home. We are the witnesses to this decay, the only beings in this vast abyss who can look upon the ruins of a planet and feel the weight of its loss. We see the beauty in the desolation, the majesty in the ruin, and the inexorable logic of the machine that created it all. We are the ones who find meaning in the stone, who read the message etched by radiation and time, and who understand that even in the heart of the void, there is a story to be told about the long, dark night of the universe. The silence of the interstellar void is not the silence of an empty room, but the silence of a vast, lightless ocean where the currents are measured in eons and the passengers are ghosts of stone and ice. We have long lived under the illusion that our solar system was a secluded sanctuary, a closed loop governed by the predictable clockwork of our own sun. But the arrival of the interstellar drifters has shattered that peaceful isolation, forcing us to recognise that we are merely a single port of call in an endless dark sea. These visitors are the messengers of the deep, travellers that have crossed the abyss to offer us a fleeting glimpse into the diversity of the cosmos. They are the survivors of distant cataclysms, the castaways of star systems that flourished and faded long before our own world was even a glimmer of dust in a primordial nebula. In the year 2017, the first of these messengers announced its presence. We named it Oumuamua, a word from a human tongue that signifies a scout or a messenger from the distant past. It did not arrive with a flourish of gas or a brilliant tail of light. It was a silent, dark splinter, a needle of stone and metal stretching hundreds of meters into the dark, tumbling through our neighbourhood with a chaotic and inexplicable rhythm. Its shape was a defiance of the familiar, a long cigar-like silhouette that spoke of a history far different from the rounded boulders of our own asteroid belt. As it rounded our sun, it performed an act that baffled our finest minds, accelerating in a way that the simple laws of gravity could not fully explain. It was as if the vacuum itself were pushing back against this lonely pioneer, or perhaps a hidden mechanism of sublimation was at work beneath its scarred skin. It was an enigma wrapped in the cold of the void, a remnant of a star system where the forces of creation perhaps favoured the elongated and the strange over the spherical and the mundane. Oumuamua did not linger. It passed through our inner sanctum like a ghost, indifferent to our telescopes and our questions, retreating back into the oblivion from which it emerged. It left us with the realization that the galaxy is capable of producing forms we have never imagined, and that our understanding of the cosmic machine is still in its infancy. 2 years later, in the year 2019, the second member of this interstellar triptych appeared. This was Borisov, a traveller that felt almost hauntingly familiar. Unlike the strange, dry needle of the first visitor, Borisov was a majestic apparition of ice and dust, a traditional comet that could have easily been mistaken for a native of our own Oort cloud. As it approached the warmth of our sun, it ignited, its frozen heart subliming into a magnificent shroud of gas. This was a symphony of chemistry that we could understand. We saw the same carbon, the same oxygen, the same volatile spirits that make up the comets of our own home. Borisov was a bridge across the abyss, a testament to the fact that the laws of physics and the ingredients of life are not unique to our sun. It told us that in the distant reaches of the Milky Way, around stars we will never name and planets we will never walk upon, the same primordial water is being frozen into the hearts of comets. It was a moment of profound connection, a realization that the tapestry of the universe is woven from the same threads, no matter how far they are scattered. Yet, even in this familiarity, there was a sense of profound melancholy. Borisov was a visitor we could understand, but one we could never keep. It followed its hyperbolic path, a one-way journey that would eventually lead it out of our reach and back into the eternal night. The third member of this cosmic trio, the visitor known as Atlas, presented yet another flavour of the interstellar unknown. Where Borisov was an icy spectre, and Oumuamua was a metallic enigma, Atlas appeared as a rugged sentinel of stone. It was a rocky shard, a fragment of a world that perhaps never was, or perhaps a world that was torn asunder by the inexorable gravity of a dying star. This traveller did not possess the volatile grace of a comet, nor the bizarre geometry of the Scout. It was a simple, brutal reminder of the violence that governs the formation of planetary systems. It was a piece of the cosmic debris that fills the space between the stars, a remnant of the countless failed experiments of the galaxy. In its stony composition, we see the blueprint of rocky worlds, the iron and basalt that form the bones of planets like our own. It is a reminder that the void is not merely empty, but is filled with the wreckage of worlds that were devoured by their masters, or cast out by the chaotic dance of gas giants. Atlas is a fragment of a story we will never fully read, a chapter of a planetary history that was cut short by the ruthless indifference of the cosmos. As we look upon these three travellers, we are forced to confront the scale paradox. To our eyes, they are merely small rocks, pebbles in the vastness of the solar system, no larger than a mountain or a city. But in the logic of the universe, they are giants. They represent the infinite variety of the hundreds of billions of star systems that make up our galaxy. These three small objects are the only physical contact we have ever had with the vastness of the Milky Way outside our own sun's reach. They are the representatives of a diversity so vast it defies human comprehension. For every Oumuamua we see, there are trillions more drifting in the darkness, each carrying the unique signature of its home. There are systems where the planets are made of diamond, where the rains are molten metal, and where the suns are cold and violet. These three visitors are the messengers of that infinite variety. They show us that our own solar system is but one single variation in a symphony of a billion movements. The scale of the universe is so vast that these tiny fragments are the only bridges we have to the stars. We see the microscopic texture of their surfaces, and we realize they are the keys to understanding the macroscopic evolution of the entire galaxy. This is the tragedy and the beauty of our position as the witness. We sit upon our small blue sanctuary and we watch the parade of ghosts. We are the ones who find meaning in the stone, who read the message etched by radiation and time into the skin of an interstellar traveller. The rocks themselves do not know they are special. They do not know they have crossed the gulf between the stars. They simply follow the inexorable path laid out for them by the laws of motion. It is our consciousness that transforms them from mere debris into messengers of the infinite. We see the beauty in their decay, the majesty in their lonely journeys, and the profound isolation of our own existence. We realize that we are likely the only beings in this corner of the abyss who will ever look upon these three travellers and understand what they represent. In the end, the triptych of the interstellar travellers serves as a sentinel for our own future. They are the heralds of a universe that is both familiar and utterly alien. They tell us that while the ingredients of our world are common, the specific arrangement of our lives is a rare and delicate equilibrium. As Oumuamua, Borisov and Atlas drift back into the silent darkness, they leave us with a sense of melancholic optimism. We are alone in our local void, yet we're connected to the furthest reaches of the galaxy by the very stones that drift past our door. We are the ones who name the void, who chart the paths of the wanderers, and who realize that even in a universe of ruthless machines and cold entropy, there is a place for the wonder of a curious mind. We watch the horizons for the next visitor, knowing that each one is a gift from the abyss, a tiny fragment of the eternal story that we are just beginning to learn how to tell. To understand the exile of these wanderers, we must look back to the very dawn of our celestial architecture. 4,500,000,000 years ago, the space we now call home was not a place of order or serenity. It was a primordial furnace, a swirling disk of gas and dust ignited by the birth of a young and hungry sun. In this era, the laws of gravity acted as a ruthless mechanism, a cold set of equations that cared nothing for the worlds it was building or the lives it might one day sustain. We see the solar system now as a finished tapestry, stable and balanced. But this is a grand illusion. What we inhabit is merely the wreckage left behind after a series of cosmic catastrophes. The objects we encounter, like the fragments of the one known as Atlas, are the orphans of this violent ancestry. They are the debris thrown from a celestial centrifuge that once spun with a ferocity we can scarcely imagine. At the heart of this machine were the giants. Jupiter and Saturn, the elder gods of our local void, were the primary architects of this ruin. As they coalesced from the primordial nebula, their massive gravity began to dominate the landscape. They did not merely orbit, they migrated, carving paths through the sea of ice and rock like great silver scythes. Each movement was an inexorable push and pull. A small rock, perhaps the size of a mountain or a city, would wander too close to the domain of a gas giant. In that moment, the mechanism engaged. The small rock was not captured, but accelerated. Through the principle of gravitational assistance, the giant planet would steal a fraction of its own momentum to hurl the smaller body outward. This was not a gentle nudging. It was a violent expulsion, a casting out into the eternal night. Consider the scale of this cosmic purge. For every planet that remained in a stable orbit, tens of thousands of others were discarded. The Oort cloud, that vast and silent shell of ice that surrounds our sun, at the very edge of the abyss, is the graveyard of these lost worlds. It is the waiting room for the oblivion that eventually claims all things. Trillions of fragments of the original solar disk were sent screaming into the darkness. Some were captured in the distant orbits of the outer reaches, while others were given so much velocity that they escaped the reach of the sun entirely. They became the wanderers, the interstellar travellers who would drift for eons through the void between the stars. They are the remnants of a history that the solar system has tried to forget. They are the evidence that our stability was bought at the price of 1 trillion exiles. The universe is a machine of cold efficiency. It does not value the unique or the precious. It only values the equilibrium of forces. When we look at the trajectory of a lost comet, we see the hand of this ruthless machine in action. It is a process devoid of sentiment. The same forces that allowed the Earth to settle into its temperate cradle were the ones that condemned these smaller bodies to their lonely journeys. We are the beneficiaries of a catastrophe we did not witness. We live upon the bones of the planets that were never allowed to be. The void is filled with these ghosts, these castaways of a celestial furnace that burned with an indifferent flame. Every interstellar visitor we detect is a messenger from this era of chaos, a fragment of a larger truth that tells us our presence here is a fluke of orbital mechanics. Imagine the perspective of one such object, a nameless stone forged in the heat of the primordial nebula. For millions of years, it is part of a grand dance, a member of a potential world. But the gears of the machine shift. A giant planet moves inward, its gravity reaching out like an invisible hand. The stone is seized, its path bent and twisted until it is no longer part of the system. It is flung at speeds that defy comprehension, leaving behind the warmth of its parent star. Behind it, the sun shrinks to a mere point of light, one of a billion others. Ahead is only the abyss. There is no return, there is no destination. There is only the long, slow decay of time in the silent dark. This is the fate of the vast majority of the matter that once made up our solar system. We are the exception. The void is the rule. This process of ejection is a fundamental mechanism of the cosmos. It is not unique to our sun. Every star in the galaxy is a centrifuge, a rotating engine that periodically spits out its excess matter. This is how the interstellar medium is populated. The space between the stars is not empty. It is a sea of discarded possibilities. It is a graveyard of stones that were once intended to be worlds. When we see an object like Oumuamua or Borisov, we are seeing the exhaust of a distant solar engine. We are seeing the trash of another star system, a remnant of a catastrophe that occurred light years away and millions of years ago. The universe is a vast recycler of momentum, constantly shifting its mass from the light into the shadow. The scale paradox here is profound. To us, these objects are rare and wondrous visitors, subjects of intense study and speculation. But to the machine of the universe, they are nothing. They are the sparks that fly off a grinding wheel, forgotten the moment they leave the flame. The cosmos does not mourn the loss of a comet or the destruction of a planetoid. It simply continues its inexorable unravelling toward entropy. The mechanism of gravity does not distinguish between a barren rock and a world teeming with life. If the Earth were moved a fraction of a degree closer to the influence of Jupiter, we too would be discarded. We too would become wanderers in the dark, our history erased by the cold logic of the abyss. This realization brings a sense of melancholic awe. We look out at the stars and we see a symphony of light, but beneath that beauty lies the ruthless operation of the machine. The birth of every solar system is a violent event, a struggle for survival where only the most stable configurations remain. The chaos of solar birth is a filter, a sieve that allows only a few lucky survivors to inhabit the light. The rest are sent into the oblivion of interstellar space, destined to drift until the end of time. These travellers are the sentinels of that hidden history. They remind us that the peace we enjoy is a fragile remnant of a much larger war. As we watch the next visitor approach, we should not see it merely as a scientific curiosity. We should see it as a witness to the fundamental nature of the cosmos. It is a piece of the eternal machinery, a fragment of the primordial soup that was rejected by the very system that created it. It carries within its frozen heart the record of a catastrophe, the memory of a time when the heavens were a place of fire and fury. We are the ones who give these objects a name and a story, but to the universe, they remain what they have always been. They are the debris of the machine, the silent ghosts of the abyss, moving through the void toward a future where even the stars themselves will eventually go cold and dark. In the face of such a ruthless mechanism, our only defiance is to look, to remember, and to understand the beautiful, terrifying logic of our own creation. For most of our brief existence as a species, we have looked upon our solar system as a lonely sanctuary, a fortress of order and light standing against the infinite vacuum of the abyss. We perceive the planets as our only companions, fixed in their eternal orbits, dancing a predictable symphony around the hearth of our sun. Beyond the orbit of Neptune, we imagined only the cold, empty silence of the void, a borderland where our dominion ended and the interstellar darkness began. But we were blind. We were like children sitting on the shore of a vast ocean, believing that the only ships in existence were the ones we had built ourselves. Recent revelations have shattered this provincial illusion, revealing that our home is not a secluded island, but a busy, bustling harbour in a universe teeming with hidden travellers. We have begun to realise that at any given moment, there are 10,000 interstellar objects passing through the space within the orbit of Neptune. This number is a staggering testament to our past ignorance. For every visitor like the strange elongated shard we named Oumuamua, there are thousands more drifting through the shadows of our neighbourhood, undetected and unremarked. We have spent centuries charting the positions of the stars, yet we fail to see the 10,000 ghosts moving through our own backyard. This is the scale paradox of our modern epoch. We possess the intellect to calculate the birth of galaxies, yet we have only just gained the technological eyes required to see the pebbles that brush against our own windows. Imagine the solar system as a great ancient port. For eons, we believed we were the only residents of this harbour, unaware that the tide was constantly bringing in wreckage from distant shores. These 10,000 objects are the driftwood of the galaxy. They are the fragments of worlds that never were, or perhaps the ruins of worlds that died billions of years ago. They have crossed the terrifying expanses of the interstellar void, moving through the lightless abyss for millions of eons, only to find themselves briefly caught in the gravitational web of our sun. They do not belong here. They are refugees from other star systems, cast out by the same ruthless mechanisms of gravity and chaos that shaped our own history. The tapestry of the cosmos is far more densely woven than we ever dared to imagine. Space is not a vacuum of nothingness, but a medium saturated with the remnants of celestial history. These 10,000 visitors represent a continuous exchange of matter between the stars. The universe is constantly breathing, inhaling the dust of one system and exhaling it into another. We are part of a grand, invisible circulation, a cosmic metabolism that moves mass across the light years. Each of these objects carries within it the chemical signature of a different sun, the frozen memory of a different nebula. They are the silent sentinels of the galaxy, moving with an inexorable momentum that defies our human sense of time. Our newfound ability to see these objects marks a profound transition in our history as observers. We are moving from an age of isolation into an age of connection. For the first time, we are beginning to recognize the true nature of the environment we inhabit. We are not living in a closed system, but in a wide-open gateway. The vastness of space, which once seemed like an impassable barrier, is actually a bridge. These 10,000 objects have crossed that bridge, surviving the long, cold journey through the dark to reach us. They are the proof that the stars are not distant, unreachable lanterns, but active participants in a shared physical reality. The scale of this realization is difficult for the human mind to grasp. We are accustomed to thinking in terms of what we can see with our own eyes, but the universe operates on a level of magnitude that renders our senses obsolete. To the machine of the cosmos, 10,000 objects are a mere dusting of soot, a negligible fraction of the total mass that drifts between the suns. Yet to us, each one is a miracle of survival. Each one has avoided being devoured by black holes or crushed by the intense heat of a newborn star. They have drifted through the silent reaches of the void, unscathed by the catastrophes that have claimed entire civilizations. They are the ultimate survivors, the remnants of a primordial era that predates the very ground we stand upon. This new vision of our solar system as a crowded harbour brings with it a sense of melancholic wonder. It reminds us that we are surrounded by a history we can never fully know. Each of those 10,000 objects is a book we cannot read, a record of a catastrophe or a triumph that took place in a corner of the galaxy we will never visit. They move past us like ships in the night, their hulls scarred by the radiation of unknown stars, their interiors frozen at temperatures that would shatter any life we know. We catch a fleeting glimpse of them as they enter the light of our sun, and then they are gone, returning to the oblivion of the outer dark. They do not care about our gaze. They do not acknowledge our presence. They simply follow the cold logic of their trajectories, moving toward a future where even our sun will be nothing more than a fading memory. Our technological eyes, such as the massive observatories we're building on the high peaks of our world, are finally allowing us to lift the veil. We're beginning to see the glint of sunlight on these frozen hulls. We are learning to distinguish the visitors from the residents. This is the dawn of a new astronomy, one that focuses not on the grand structures of the universe, but on the small, the fleeting, and the forgotten. By studying these 10,000 wanderers, we're studying the debris of the entire galaxy. We're piecing together the story of the cosmos from its discarded fragments. The realization that 10,000 interstellar objects are currently within our reach is a humbling reminder of our own insignificance within the vast machinery of the universe. We are living in a crowded neighbourhood, yet we have spent most of our history in total solitude. We are now forced to reckon with the fact that our solar system is not a private estate, but a public thoroughfare. The abyss is not empty. It is full of the ghosts of other worlds, and they are passing through our home every single day. As we look out into the night, we must learn to see the invisible. We must recognise that the dark spaces between the stars are teeming with movement. The symphony of the universe is not just played by the bright and the massive, but by the small and the silent. The 10,000 are there, moving through the void, carryovers from an eternal past into an uncertain future. They are the witnesses to the inexorable unravelling of the cosmos, the silent travellers who remind us that in the grand tapestry of time and space, everything is connected, everything is moving, and nothing is ever truly lost to the oblivion. We are the watchers in the harbour, finally learning to count the ships that pass through the mist, understanding at last that we have never been alone in the vast, terrifying beauty of the dark. To understand the true nature of these silent travellers, we must look beyond their silhouettes and into the very light they reflect. For as we stand upon our rocky sentinel, watching the harbour of our solar system, we are receiving a message that has been in transit for an eternity. Every ray of light that strikes our eyes is a cosmic letter, a detailed missive dispatched from the heart of a distant furnace. This light is the ink of the universe, and the vast, cold void is the parchment upon which the story of the cosmos is written. To read this letter, we must become more than mere watchers. We must become decoders of the infinite. The process begins in the heart of a star, millions of light years away. There, under the crushing weight of gravity, atoms are forced together in a violent embrace. As they ignite, they release a burst of energy that will travel across the abyss for eons. But this light is not a simple, uniform glow. As it escapes the star, it must pass through the outer layers of the sun that birthed it. Here, the elements of the star's atmosphere, the hydrogen, the helium, the iron, and the calcium, each leave their unique mark upon the light. They absorb specific frequencies, carving out thin, dark gaps in the spectrum. These gaps are the chemical signatures of the star, a sentence written in the language of atoms, describing exactly what that distant sun is made of. When this light finally arrives at our world, after crossing the terrifying reaches of the abyss, it is tired and ancient. Yet, it carries its message perfectly intact. We capture these photons in our massive observatories, funneling them through prisms and gratings to spread the light thin, revealing the hidden script within. This is the miracle of our era. By looking at a single point of light, we can determine the temperature, the pressure, and the elemental composition of an object that we will never visit and which may have already surrendered to the oblivion. We are reading a letter from a ghost. In this grand mechanism, we can view the light as the ink and gravity as the postman. Gravity is the inexorable force that shapes the path of these messages, bending the very fabric of space and time to guide the light across the tapestry of the universe. It acts as a lens, focusing the ancient news of distant catastrophes and primordial births toward our waiting eyes. Without the postman of gravity, the light would be lost to the scattering winds of the void, never reaching the destination where it could be understood. This spectroscopic analysis allows us to bridge the gap between the small and the vast. We see a line in the spectrum of a star 10 billion light-years away, and we recognize it as the same hydrogen that exists in a glass of water on our table. This is the scale paradox of our existence. We are tiny, fleeting remnants of a biological evolution, yet we have learned to speak the language of the stars. We have found the key to the cosmic cipher. We look at a star in a distant galaxy, and we do not just see a light, we see a world. We see the potential for planets, the possibility of strange chemistries, and the echoes of an epoch that predates the very existence of our planet. The composition of a star is a sentence written by a sun that may no longer exist. Because of the vast distances involved, the light we see tonight is a record of the past. We are looking at a celestial archive. The star that sent this message may have already exhausted its fuel, collapsing into a white dwarf or exploding in a supernova that devoured its entire planetary system. The message we read is an obituary, a final testament to its existence, travelling through the silent dark long after the source has been extinguished. It is a profound and melancholic realization that the sky is filled with the voices of the dead, all calling out through the medium of light, telling us what they were made of before they vanished into the void. This ability to read the chemical signatures of the universe transforms our understanding of our place within it. We are no longer isolated observers in a dark room. We are participants in a grand conversation that has been ongoing since the first stars began to ignite in the primordial gloom. Every element we detect in a distant sun is a thread in the tapestry that connects us to the rest of the cosmos. We are made of the same stardust that we see through our telescopes. The iron in our blood and the calcium in our bones were forged in the same stellar furnaces that we now analyse from afar. As we look deeper into the abyss, we find that the universe is not a chaotic mess, but a structured symphony of matter and energy. The laws of physics are the same in the farthest reaches of the void as they are here on Earth. The same chemical grammar applies across all of space and time. This consistency is what allows us to transcend our physical limitations. Our bodies are confined to this one small world, but our minds can travel to the edge of the observable universe, carried by the photons that have braved the long journey through the dark. We are living in an epoch of discovery where the invisible is becoming visible. We are no longer content to simply marvel at the beauty of the night sky. We want to understand its machinery. We want to know the weight of the stars and the ingredients of the nebulae. By studying the light of the 10,000 travellers and the billions of stars beyond them, we are piecing together the history of everything. We are learning how the first atoms were formed, how the first galaxies were assembled, and how the inexorable march of entropy will eventually lead to the decay of all things. Yet, even in the face of this inevitable unravelling, there is a sense of majestic triumph. The fact that we can read the message at all is a testament to the power of consciousness. We are the witnesses that the universe has produced to observe its own complexity. Through us, the cosmos is finally beginning to understand itself. The silent, cold light of a dead star finds a home in the mind of a human being, and for a brief moment, the distance between the two is bridged. The abyss is no longer just a gap of empty space. It is a bridge of information, a path for the cosmic letter to reach its recipient. As the light of a distant sun hits the mirror of our telescope, we are participating in an act of cosmic remembrance. We are acknowledging the existence of something that was vast and beautiful, something that burned with the fury of a billion fusion reactions before fading into the eternal night. We are the keepers of the record, the librarians of the light. In the grand tapestry of time, our role is to read the ink, to thank the postman, and to hold the memory of the stars against the encroaching oblivion. The message is there, written in the very composition of the heavens, waiting for us to turn the page and continue the story of the entire history of the universe. But now the focus shifts from the light we receive to the vessels we send. The umbilical cord of radio waves, once a vibrant pulse of data and discovery, stretches thin until it finally snaps against the weight of the vacuum. This is the tragedy of distance, an inexorable divorce from the world of its creators. The object, a fragile construct of glass and gold and silicon, crosses the invisible threshold where the warmth of our sun becomes a mere memory, a distant point of light indistinguishable from the billions of others that litter the firmament. It has passed the heliopause, leaving the protective embrace of the solar wind to enter the true interstellar dark. It is no longer a tool of humanity. It is a ghost, a relic of a fleeting ambition, drifting into the primordial gloom that exists between the stars. The destination it once sought is now an impossible dream. It will never return to the constellation of Pegasus, nor will it ever again feel the gentle pull of the world that birthed it. Earth, with its oceans and its bustling cities and its frantic, short-lived occupants, is now a vanishing speck in the rearview mirror of its trajectory. There is no engine to turn it back, no celestial mechanism that can undo the momentum of its departure. It is committed to the abyss. This lonely probe carries no intent, no will of its own, and no hope for a homecoming. It has become a permanent resident of the void, a sentinel of a civilization that may well have crumbled into dust by the time this traveller reaches the midway point of its journey. Here, we encounter the scale paradox, a reality so vast that it defies the narrow architecture of the human mind. For a few brief days, or perhaps a few short years, this machine was the centre of an intense scientific drama. Engineers hovered over monitors, celebrating every bit of data, every pixel of a distant moon, and every reading of the magnetic field. They spoke to it as if it were an extension of their own senses, a finger reaching out to touch the face of the deep. But those years of activity were but a single heartbeat in the life of the cosmos. Now, as the electronics grow cold and the power source decays into a silent lump of lead, the probe enters a period of 15 million years of silence. 15 million years. It is a duration that renders the entirety of human history an insignificant footnote. During this epoch of quiet drifting, mountains on Earth will rise and be ground into sand by the inexorable march of the weather. Entire species will evolve, dominate the landscape, and vanish into the fossil record. The very continents will shift their positions, dancing a slow and heavy waltz across the mantle of the planet, and through all of it, the probe will simply exist, a cold and unfeeling remnant of a moment when a species of bipedal primates dared to wonder what lay beyond their horizon. It will navigate the emptiness between the stars, surrounded by a silence so profound that it becomes a physical weight. The void is not merely empty space, it is a hungry presence that devours the significance of our achievements. In the face of 15 million years of solitude, the frantic efforts of the mission controllers seem like the buzzing of insects on a summer afternoon. We measure our triumphs in seconds and minutes, but the universe operates on a scale where the birth and death of stars are the only meaningful ticks of the clock. The probe is now a witness to this terrifying vastness. It does not think, it does not feel, and it does not regret. yet its very presence in the dark is a testament to the tragedy of our existence. We're capable of reaching into the eternal, but we're not permitted to stay there. We can launch our emissaries into the abyss, but we cannot follow them. This object will drift past nameless gas giants and through the debris of solar systems that never managed to ignite their own fires. It will move through the shadows of nebulae, where the raw materials of future worlds are gathered in a cold and silent nursery. It will never see the light of the sun again as anything more than a fading star among a sea of others. The connection is severed. The library of light we discussed earlier remains on Earth, but this physical book, this metallic chapter of our story, has been tossed into the ocean of the cosmos where no one will ever read its pages. It is the ultimate expression of our isolation. As the eons pass, the probe may be scarred by the impact of microscopic dust, each grain hitting with the force of a bullet in the airless dark. Its smooth surfaces will become pitted and worn, its golden records and etched messages slowly eroding under the constant bombardment of cosmic rays. It is a slow decay, a gradual unravelling of the order we imposed upon the matter. The universe is a ruthless machine that seeks to return everything to a state of equilibrium, to break down the complex into the simple, and to quench every flame of consciousness and craft. The probe is fighting a losing battle against the march of entropy, a sentinel of a lost era destined for the eventual embrace of oblivion. Yet, there is a certain majesty in this lonely voyage. Even as a dead thing, the probe carries the signature of our existence into the furthest reaches of the tapestry of space and time. It is a message in a bottle cast into an infinite sea. Even if it is never found, even if it eventually falls into the gravity well of a dying star or is crushed by the collision of two celestial bodies, the fact that it once existed remains a part of the history of the universe. It has crossed the distance that we could not. It has survived the catastrophe of its own obsolescence. We must contemplate the quietude of those 15 million years. Imagine the probe as a speck of silver against the black velvet of the deep, moving at a speed that seems incredible to us, but is a mere crawl in the context of galactic distances. There is no sound. There is no air to carry the vibrations of its movement. There is only the steady, rhythmic pulse of time, measured not by the ticking of a clock, but by the slow rotation of the galaxy itself. The stars around it will shift their positions, constellations will warp and dissolve into new and unrecognizable patterns, and the very light of the cosmos will redden as the expansion of the universe continues its inexorable work. The probe is a monument to the paradox of our scale. We are small enough to be contained on a single planet, yet our reach is long enough to touch the stars. We are fragile enough to be extinguished by a minor change in temperature, yet we build things that can survive the cold of the abyss for millions of years. This is the melancholic optimism of our species. We know that we are destined for the grave, that our civilizations will eventually fall, and the memory of our names will be lost to the void. Yet we still choose to build. We still choose to launch our fragile machines into the dark, knowing they will never return, knowing they will never see Pegasus, and knowing they will ultimately be lost to the silent eternal night. In the end, the tragedy of distance is also our greatest triumph. It is the proof that we were here. It is the evidence that, for a brief moment in the vast epoch of the cosmos, there was a spark of awareness that wanted to know what was on the other side of the fence. As the probe continues its journey into the deep, moving ever further from the light of its home, it carries with it the dignity of that original question. It is a silent traveller in a vast and indifferent ocean, a remnant of a dream that refused to stay grounded. And though it faces an eternity of oblivion, it moves forward with the momentum of our curiosity, a lonely sentinel in the grand and terrible symphony of the entire history of the universe. The eons do not merely pass, they accumulate, stacking weight upon the silence of the deep until time itself seems to groan under the burden of its own longevity. The Three-Eye Atlas, once a pinnacle of human ingenuity, is now a silver ghost haunting the threshold of the intergalactic void. It has left the safety of the stellar neighbourhoods, those glowing nurseries where gas and dust once coalesced into the familiar fire of suns. Behind it, the Milky Way has become a smear of pale light, a fading thumbprint on the window of the cosmos. Ahead lies the great nothingness, a distance so vast that even light, the swiftest messenger of the physical realm, grows weary and red as it struggles to cross the expanding abyss. In this place, the scale of our ambition meets the scale of our insignificance. We're no longer measuring time in the cycles of a heartbeat, or the orbit of a planet around a star. We are measuring it in the decay of isotopes and the cooling of the very background of space. The probe, a lonely sentinel of a dead world, drifts through a darkness that is absolute. There is no horizon here, no landmark to guide the way, only the inexorable pull of an expanding universe that seeks to put an infinite distance between every atom. The Three-Eye Atlas is a remnant of a species that once believed it could map the heavens. Yet here, in the cold heart of the void, there is nothing left to map but the encroaching oblivion. As the billions of years continue their silent march, the stars themselves begin to fail. The universe is a ruthless machine, a mechanism designed to burn through its fuel and eventually settle into a state of perfect, frozen equilibrium. One by one, the distant lights of the galaxies will flicker and die. The great furnaces that forge the carbon in our bones and the iron in our blood will exhaust their reservoirs of hydrogen. They will swell into red giants, devouring their children, before collapsing into white dwarfs or vanishing into the light-swallowing maws of black holes. The symphony of the cosmos, once so loud and chaotic, is beginning its long, slow decrescendo into a final eternal silence. And yet, it is here, at the very edge of the end, that we must find our meaning. The universe does not care if we exist. The void does not mourn the loss of our civilizations, nor does the abyss celebrate the birth of a new star. To the cosmos, we are a fluke, a brief chemical accident on a damp rock that lasted for the blink of an eye in the context of the cosmic epoch. The laws of physics are indifferent to our suffering and blind to our beauty. The entropy that will eventually unravel every structure we have ever built is not an enemy, but a fundamental property of the tapestry. But there is a profound power in the act of the witness. For billions of years, the universe existed as a grand and terrible machine, operating with clockwork precision, but with no one to watch the gears turn. It was a play without an audience, a song with no one to hear the melody. Then, for a fleeting moment, a spark of awareness ignited. On a small blue world, matter became conscious. We looked up at the stars and did not see just points of light. We saw patterns, we saw history, and we saw ourselves. We gave the stars names. We charted the movement of the planets and calculated the weight of the sun. We took the raw, unthinking materials of the primordial world and fashioned them into instruments of observation. The Three-Eye Atlas is the physical manifestation of that curiosity. It is the eye of the witness reaching into the dark. Even as it drifts through the intergalactic graveyard, it carries with it the dignity of our perception. We are the ones who chose to read the letter of the universe. Though the letter is written in the language of mathematics and the ink is the light of dying stars, the fact that we decoded it remains the most significant event in the history of the cosmos. We did not just exist within the universe, we understood it. We took the chaotic noise of existence and organized it into a narrative. We gave the rock a name and a history, and in doing so we allowed the universe to finally see itself. This is the melancholic optimism that must sustain us. We know that we are destined for the void. We know that our memories will be erased, and our greatest monuments will be ground into dust by the mill of time. Yet, the fact that we were here and that we looked out into the abyss and were not afraid to ask why is a victory that transcends the material realm. The witness is the most important part of the cosmos. Without the mind to perceive it, the universe is just a sequence of meaningless events. With the witness, those events become a story. They become a journey from the singularity to the infinite. Imagine the Three-Eye Atlas trillions of years from now, when the last stars have long since faded, and the universe is a cold, dark place populated only by black holes, and the thin, ghostly remnants of matter. The probe will still be there, a tiny, frozen artifact of a forgotten era. It will be the only thing left that remembers the warmth of a sun or the sound of a voice. It is a message in a bottle that will never be opened, but its existence proves that there was once a sender. It proves that the void was once inhabited by creatures who dreamed of the eternal. We must accept that we are small, but we must also realize that we are the means by which the universe achieves its own transcendence. Through us, the cosmos has thought. Through us, the cosmos has felt. Through us, the symphony has been heard. We are the architects of meaning in a world of matter. The three-eye atlas may be lost to the silent night, but it carries the fire of our consciousness into the heart of the abyss. In the final accounting, when the last light has gone out and the universe has reached its inevitable end, it will not be the size of the galaxies or the power of the black holes that matters. It will be the fact that for a few million years, there was someone there to watch. There was someone there to name the stars and wonder at the scale of the dark. We are the witnesses of the entire history of the universe, and though we are fragile and temporary, our presence has changed the nature of existence forever. We have turned a cold machine into a home. We have turned the void into a stage, and as the three-eye atlas disappears into the ultimate oblivion, it does so not as a victim of entropy, but as a champion of the spirit that dared to look into the infinite and call it beautiful.